The race to the South Pole, a deadly rivalry. In the early 20th century, the frozen wilderness of Antarctica was the last great unexplored region on Earth. A hostile, ice-covered land where temperatures could drop so low, a man's breath could freeze in the air. But it was here that two determined explorers would risk everything to achieve eternal glory, to be the first humans to reach the South Pole. On one side was Captain Robert Falcon Scott, a British naval officer with the weight of his nation on his shoulders. On the other, Roald Amundsen, a Norwegian explorer, clever and calculating, who would stop at nothing to make history. This is the story of two men, two teams, and one race. A race where the stakes were survival, fame, and the ultimate conquest of the unknown. In 1910, Scott began his expedition, backed by the British Empire and with high hopes of achieving what no man had done before. He brought a large team, well stocked with supplies, scientific instruments, and a fleet of ponies to carry loads across the Antarctic ice. His mission was not only to claim the South Pole for Britain, but also to conduct important scientific research. But Scott was unaware of a dangerous secret. Roald Amundsen, originally planning an expedition to the North Pole, had quietly shifted his focus southward, making a daring gamble. He would use everything he knew about polar survival to outwit Scott and claim the South Pole for Norway. While Scott's team embarked on their journey filled with scientific ambition, Amundsen's mission was singular: win the race. The Antarctic summer of 1911 saw both teams arrive at the edge of the frozen continent. But from the start, their strategies diverged dramatically. Scott's team, in the spirit of British stoicism, relied on slow, heavy sledges pulled by ponies and motorized sledges. But the motorized sledges broke down early, and the ponies, unsuited for the brutal cold, soon began to falter. Amundsen, in contrast, brought dog sled teams which he had trained meticulously. These dogs thrived in the icy conditions, and Amundsen's team moved swiftly across the frozen wasteland. While Scott battled the elements with inefficient equipment and a slow pace, Amundsen's team glided across the ice, covering miles with precision and speed. As the two teams journeyed further south, the landscape grew more treacherous. Blizzards howled across the endless fields of snow. Temperatures plunged to deadly lows, and frostbite became a constant companion. Both teams faced agonizing choices. Scott's men, now struggling with weakened ponies, had to slaughter the animals to eat and lighten their loads. Their progress slowed to a crawl. Meanwhile, Amundsen's dogs pushed on through the frozen tundra, propelling the Norwegians ever closer to their goal. But even as Amundsen gained ground, the brutal cold took a toll. The mental and physical strain mounted. Every mile was a battle against the wind, the ice, and their own bodies. On December 14, 1911, after months of frozen suffering and meticulous planning, Amundsen and his team finally reached the South Pole. The Norwegian flag was planted, fluttering in the icy winds of the Antarctic. The triumph belonged to Norway, and Amundsen had made history. Amundsen's return journey was equally calculated. He left caches of food along the route to ensure their survival on the way back. His entire team made it home alive, celebrated as heroes. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles behind, Scott's team struggled on, unaware that they had already lost the race. Finally, on January 17, 1912, they reached the pole, only to discover Amundsen's flag waving proudly. The crushing reality set in. After all their efforts, they were too late. Heartbroken and weakened, Scott's team turned back, but their return journey would be a descent into despair. The supplies they had left behind were too few, and exhaustion and starvation set in. One by one, Scott's men perished in the unforgiving cold. In his final diary entry, written from a frozen tent where he awaited death, Scott wrote, "We shall stick it out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more." Scott and his remaining men never made it back. Their bodies were found months later, frozen in place, their last camp only 11 miles from a supply depot that could have saved them. Amundsen returned home a hero, while Scott's death became a symbol of tragic heroism. His story, while one of defeat, resonated deeply with the British public, who saw him as a martyr to the cause of exploration. Both men, in their own way, left a lasting legacy. Amundsen, the victor, and Scott, the fallen hero. The race to the South Pole remains one of the greatest tales of adventure and human endurance in history. It's a story of ambition, rivalry, and survival against impossible odds. One that still captivates us today.